Full disclosure. The voice you are listening to now is artificially generated, brought to you by satisphonic.com. See the link in the description for more details. What is the current thing that future generations will say? I can't believe they used to do that. They used to send people to prison for life for having a little bit of weed, overheard from a Gen Z. It's already happening. Pollute the shit out of our oceans. Pollute a litter, anything. I flipped out on my cousin a little while back because he came to visit and we went on a hike, finished a water bottle and just fucking tossed it in this beautiful fucking forest. I about threw him in the forest and carried the bottle out. My daughter is the polar opposite. She is always picking up trash she finds laying around outside, and if she witnesses someone littering, she calls them out on it. She's only 4, so it's like really embarrassing for them when she yells out, "Hey, pick up your trash." When I called him out on it and grabbed the bottle, he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that." I love the kid. He's just as goofy and clever as I am, and we vibe off each other so well. But in that moment, all I saw was red. He brings it up all the time now when I see him, still apologizes but confirms that he'll never do it again. I'm probably ranting at this point, but I had some beers and just going off, so don't mind me. Why we have treated our waterways and oceans as oubliettes is puzzling to me. Do people not realize you need water to fucking live? The way we treat cancer, hopefully. My God, man, drilling holes in his head is not the answer. The artery must be repaired. Now, put away your butcher's knives and let me save this patient before it's too late. Why we have treated our waterways and oceans as oubliettes is puzzling to me. Do people not realize you need water to fucking live? This exact quote came to me when I read this. I can't believe they destroyed all their cells to go after cancer cells. Dialysis. If you know the process, it's gruesome and medieval. Implantable blood filtering machines would be a nice feature. Technically, we have that in the form of peritoneal dialysis, but it's also quite a gruesome process when you get down to it. But whether you consider it more or less gruesome depends on the prognosis of the patient. Isn't it basically running all the person's blood through a filtering machine and then back into the body? Repeat every few days? Or am I missing some extra horror about it? A filtering machine that only works as well as 10% of a functioning kidney does. It just about keeps you afloat, but all sorts of chemicals aren't getting filtered properly and cause issue. It also takes a physical and mental toll on the body sitting for 5 hours, 3 days a week minimum, depending how bad your function is. And for a lot of people, they suffer from great fatigue. Not to mention the stress dialysis puts on the heart. Was on dialysis, recently had a transplant. Yay. I grew a new kidney. The doctor gave me a pill, and I grew a new kidney. This is wishful thinking, but post their entire fucking lives onto the internet. I believe that this will only become more extreme. We'll probably have to wait to see how Gen Z's children react to their parents' habits. My Gen Z kids are actually pretty selective about what they post. Also, they will purge everything off their pages every few months. I know that's a small sample, but they act like everyone their age is the same on social media. I noticed that with people my age and younger, we always either purge older pictures or delete accounts and make new ones. One of most unsettling conversations I had is about dialysis. Not the process, but elementary schoolmate's dad was on it for a year, and then he said his dad is fine now, but he will need to stay in China for a few days for recovery. We thought, oh, that's nice. Doctors fix him. He went on to tell us how awesome those doctors in China are, and his neighbor went through similar surgery too. It took a few years for me to realize his dad basically buying a kidney from someone. It was almost 20 ago, but the moment it dawned on me, it was so disturbing because it was so common back then. Well, the idea that what you post on the internet is there forever is a wrong for most people. Unless there's someone dedicated to maintaining an archive, like the good people in Rakiva team, a lot of stuff can just vanish overnight when a company decides to pull the plug on a project. Elon Musk, for example, plans to start deleting old accounts on Twitter. This seemingly innocuous decision can have big impacts on our capacity to do historical research. We could lose, for example, discussions that were happening on the platform back in the 2013 mass protests in Brazil, using an example from my country, LOL. It's so weird that we've come full circle on that shit. I have way more OPSEC than my nibblings. When I was a kid, my older sister gave out her details in a chat room. We used CompuServe, I believe, and she was in one of the random chat rooms where everyone used to ask us. She replied honestly, 12 of me. Some guy in there told her he was also in I, and yeah, you know where this story is going. It ended when he came to our goddamn house one afternoon. My sister and I were home alone, yai latchkey kids in the 80s. And our parents were at work. It was 3:52. The time on the digital clock fucking seared into my brain, because we were up in her room on the computer. And the front door opened. We froze, staring at each other. We could hear heavy footsteps downstairs, and a scratched male voice saying hello.
Marie!
Hello? We both dove behind her bed. She had the presence of mind to grab the cordless phone from her nightstand. Remember, no cell phones. I had the foresight to turn off the monitor on the computer so he wouldn't know we were in here. She called our mom in a panic, whisper, shouting that there was a man in the house. My mom worked in the city, about an hour away. I can't imagine how fucking scared she was, knowing her 2 girls were home alone with some internet creep. Mom worked for a rich guy who had several phone lines, so she panicked, dialed our next-door neighbor. He was an extremely big Italian guy who worked as a criminal defense lawyer in the 80s in Nice, so you can draw some conclusions there. He worked odd hours, and we got lucky. He was home. I used to be scared of that neighbor. After hearing him burst into our house and beat the fucking tar out of the creepo, I ran to him and hugged his leg and wouldn't let go until Mom got home. Creepo scraped himself off the pavement, limped to his car, and left. Neighbor didn't try to stop him, probably because 2 screaming little girls were attached to him. He had 2 little girls himself, I believe. I don't think police got involved on either side. If you're reading this, neighbor guy, you're still my hero. And you're still scary. Science. This plastic stuff is really difficult and expensive to recycle, never truly goes away, and likely has horrible long-term effects on the bodies of all organic life on Earth, humans included. People use plastic for everything, all the time, everywhere. I wonder if it will be led to more polarization, all or nothing. I know some people who have quit the internet on the social media side cold turkey, while others seemingly are putting a story up every day. Overuse of antibiotics. Not just on humans, most antibiotics are used on livestock and animal agriculture. Human use only accounts for about 1/3 of all antibiotic use. University. Ag. Scientist in the US here. This is often overstated or outright misunderstood. Most antibiotics used for livestock are either ones not feasible for human use, human toxicity, or ones we basically wrecked with human use already. Then you have some chemicals classified as antibiotics that are more probiotic for beneficial bacteria in the gut that help with feed efficiency. These often don't really pay for farmers, but they also aren't affecting human medical use. Adding antibiotics like this that have a high volume end up biasing by weight usage estimates when you try to compare to human use, in addition to comparing across classes in general. The reality in the US, though, is that you really can't get a hold of antibiotics to use in feed. Even if you have one of the niche uses for antibiotic feed use, like if your cows on pasture have pink eye running rampant to the point they are losing eyes, you can only try to play whack-a-mole treating individual ones while the disease spreads to others. If you ask your vet for treated feed for the whole herd, even in this scenario, they say there are just too many regulatory hurdles for them to approve what was supposed to be a justified use for animal welfare. In short, internet depictions on this one are often very different than what farmers are actually doing or dealing with, being in places with no cell internet signal. I lived in a small town where there was almost no signal until recently, but I'm seeing fewer and fewer places where that is the case. It was only a few years ago that I would have to download a few podcasts for a 2-hour road trip. Coverage has gotten so good, I no longer have to prepare my travel media. The way the mental health system treats psych patients in hospitals and programs when you have severe symptoms. You'll get drugged up, and the whole experience is pretty traumatizing. It's also quite surprising how little people in hospitals actually know about mental health. It's not always specific people either. It's just the system as a whole. Getting sent home in the middle of a mental health crisis because your insurance cuts out. Or losing a bed in a program because someone is worse than you. Being in hospitals really makes you rate everyone's symptoms and how bad they are. You'll subconsciously start putting people in order from worst mental health to best. It's a really toxic experience. Once you get put into a long-term program, it's just so terrible. So much goes under the radar when it's government-run. Hopefully file your own taxes. It's needlessly complicated. You say, edit, since this is getting some traction. Many countries do this successfully. Yes, this would be for most people. A small percent of the population would make adjustment. The IRS knows most of your itemized information anyway. I have probably prepared over 1,000 1040s. Mostly rich people with complicated taxes. Yes, you can file yours in 4 minutes. That doesn't mean everyone else can. The IRS was ready to solve this in the 90s, but a bloc lobbied against it, and Intuit has been fighting it for years. The lawyer-economist professor who is leading the charge against this and promoting the one-page tax return is Steve's father. The incessant inundation of marketing in our daily lives. Our technology gathers our data to tailor ads to sell us more useless trash. Your TV records you so people in an office somewhere can socially engineer ways to sell you another TV. We see something like 5,000 advertisements a day. They're still trying to put big ads in the night sky. It's far too much, and the future will consider us barbaric for allowing it. Sam Bankman, fried. Toilet paper. I can't wait for the 3 shells. My mom has always decorated the bathroom with 3 shells. I still don't know if she is making a reference or she just likes shell. Buying bottled water from another continent, and have all restaurants being Taco Bell. For the user, I'm really hoping they'll be horrified that healthcare was for profit and many people paid for cancer treatments through popularity contests online. People in most of the world are horrified by this today. People in the US are horrified by this today. Hopefully things like school shootings will become something we only talk about in past tense. We'll look at a graph over time, and this time period is just a weird uptick amidst a big downward trend. The ass first pose. Sorry, don't know what it's called. Like, here's a pic of your grandmother at the Grand Canyon when she was young. Sorry her ass is so prominent in every picture, but that was the style at the time. No, I don't have any other poses of her. One trick is to tell them stories that don't go anywhere, like the time I caught the ferry over to Shelbyville. I needed a new heel for my shoe, so I decided to go to Morganville, which is what they called Shelbyville in those days. So I tied an onion to my belt, which was the style at the time. Now to take the ferry cost a nickel. And in those days, nickels had pictures of bumblebees on them. Give me 5 bees for a quarter, you'd say. Now, where were we? Oh yeah, the important thing was that I had an onion on my belt, which was the style at the time. They didn't have white onions because of the war. The only thing you could get was those big yellow ones. This comment made me laugh, but then made me sad because I realized quoting Simpsons is something that somewhere in the hopefully very distant future people just won't do anymore. I used to be with, but then they changed what it was. Now what I'm with and isn't anymore, and what's it seems weird and scary. It'll happen to you. But Simpson, I'm 40 and it's alarming how the truth of this snuck up on me. The upshot is that pretending I'm with it makes my teens so embarrassed, and it's hilarious.
Oh, honey, your fit is so riz.
Oh, Mom, stop entertainment for life. Working 5 days a week, hopefully. Can you give an example of this? I have no idea what you are referring to. That we use to get most of our energy by burning the planet. Coal, natural gas, gasoline, oil, trees. Whatever. Any of that. We literally poisoned and killed ourselves slowly and knowingly for like 100 years so far. Just like we can look back on the use of lead pipes and paint and asbestos insulation flooring, whatever, and be rather disgusted. I sincerely hope we do so with oil. In my lifetime would be amazing, and the sooner the better at the rate we're going. Don't forget single-use plastics. I have no doubt at some point people will be dumbfounded that every minute of every day the entire world's population would use single-use plastics and packaging, put it in the bin knowing it would go into landfill for the next 10,000 years, despite alternatives being readily available. I really think a long time from now we'll view how we treat animals pretty distastefully. Elephants bury their dead and can paint. Dolphins have language and some are growing thumb. They are clearly more sentient than we give them credit for, and we use our lack of understanding of consciousness to justify it. Holy shit, they're growing thumbs. I've never heard of that. That's nuts. Oh, it's a reach. It's more like cleft palate of the fins. But if those dolphins can actually get some value out of their mutation, then some natural selection might start happening. Drive your own car, especially when drunk. Now, this is way, way in the future, but I can imagine a bunch of laughing drunk college students stumbling into their self-driving car and saying, "Ong, how did they do it back in the old days? I can barely walk straight." The correct answer would be, they died. That's how they did it in the old days. They died. I think having multiple monthly services for essentially the same thing. There's people out there that pay for Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney's, and even some more at the same time. I think in the future we will either go back to having one central service, or have at least learned to only have one active and cancel the others in the meantime. People use that loser website, Reddit. Alright, Grandpa, let's get you to bed. I'm not even a vegetarian, but I think that our grandkids will be horrified by how we got our meat. This assumes that lab-grown meat keeps advancing. Birth control, in the form that completely shuts down a female's entire reproductive system, even though there is only roughly a 5-day window each month that they can actually get pregnant. Focus on those 5 days and not shutting down the entire system. Birth control, as we know it today, like the combination pill, was invented in the 1950s. That's old now. Time for an updated form of birth control. As someone who loves meat, I hope lab-grown meat is able to be a sustainable alternative to natural meat that tastes the same and has no unexpected effects, so that we don't have to kill harm-abuse animals for our meat anymore.